Hello, I'm Bill Leipold, and welcome to this edition of Breakfast at the Barracks. Joining me today is Tim Pernetti, Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at Rutgers, New Brunswick. Tim, glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's jump in. You've been here for a little time at Rutgers, and so what are you thinking in terms of what you want the goals for the department to be? Where do you want to go with athletics?
It's a long list. You know, as you imagine, taking over an operation this size, intercollegiate athletics at most major Division I universities is really growing at a rapid rate. Not only the size of the departments, the number of sports in certain cases, obviously the finances are growing, but you really have to focus on the business goals, and then you have to focus on what the environmental goals are.
Right.
The business goals obviously are we want to try to continue to do everything we can do to create a great experience for our fans, to try to create an affordable experience for our fans, to try to grow revenues in the best possible ways to support the growing cost of scholarships and tuition and various things. So on the business side, our goal is very simple, which is to constantly move the business towards profitability. It's not a place it's in now, but I'm hopeful that by the time I'm done here or they kick me out of here, that it'll be in that place.
Right.
You know, the environmental goal really is the important one because, we have several hundred student athletes here at Rutgers. And having been a student athlete here, your life is just not a normal life.
Right.
You manage your academic life and you manage your athletic life, and during your competitive season there's very little time for socializing and going out and all those things. So the environment that we provide for our student athletes needs to be excellent. We need to provide them support on the academic front. We need to provide them personal support. We need to provide them athletic developmental support and coaching and various other ways. And then we have a mentoring program with our faculty across campus, and we try to integrate all the great people that Rutgers has from various different facets of the university into the development of these young people. Because, if the environment is good, I think everybody's perspective is, well, intercollegiate athletics is about winning. Hey, we all want to win. Right. I mean, that's obviously a goal, but it's got to be the last thing you think about. If the environment is very good, if the support system is very good, the winning and everything comes with it.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about one of the things you put up was the business part. Some New Jersey residents were kind of upset with the new stadium. Folks are kind of upset sometimes because they see Rutgers Athletics is taking a lot of money, but it also, on the other hand, brings lots of pride to the state of New Jersey. Sure. We think about the Louisville game. It was the first time the Empire State Building was lit red for Rutgers. Right. It was up and down the the Parkway and the Jersey Turnpike. Go Rutgers! I mean, there really is. I've been at Rutgers for almost 14 years. Over the past couple of years, there's really been this sense of pride. Sure. That probably has been here, but hasn't been to the place where it is now. So how important is that to really have, the residents of New Jersey behind you with kind of having the R's on their cars and that kind of support for the team?
I think it's transformational. I really do. Having been a student athlete here in the mid-1990s and played football in the old Rutgers Stadium and seeing the transformation of the place. Stadium expansions and facility improvements, whether they're athletic or academic or otherwise, are always going to be controversial things. I think when you're a state institution, you're under the microscope and everything is in the public domain, it's very hard not to have everybody on one side or the other. Everybody will have their opinions. The stadium expansion was something I inherited. I really was like coming into the game in the fourth quarter. Everything was pretty much done. And our job right now is to manage it going forward, to generate as much ticket revenue as we can to service the debt on an annual basis, which we continue to do. But the flip side of it, I think, is really important. Is athletics gets a national vehicle on a regular basis to tell its story. Right. The 5 games a year on ESPN in college football, the 7 games a year in college basketball. But where we're challenged is Rutgers is a great institution as a whole. We need to use those vehicles of media to tell the story of the entire place. And it's, no matter how you look at it, athletics at major institutions such as Rutgers is the single strongest marketing arm of any institution. Right. Done the right way, presented the right way with the right values, which I really believe we have, where our biggest value is balance. Academic and athletic excellence can coexist at a major university. People's opinion is, for hundreds of years, that can't occur. Well, I think we've proven here by the athletic success, which is really still growing, it's in its infancy, but the academic success, which we've really set the standard nationally, that it can coexist. But that marketing arm is as strong as you can get. And when I drive up and down 287 on my way back and forth to work every morning, and you could count the double-digit block R's you see on cars.
Absolutely.
Rutgers helped in 2006 by way of one football game to bring an entire state or entire tri-state area together. And I think it's great that we can provide something, and so long as we do it the right way and do it responsibly, that people in the state of New Jersey can be proud to associate with.
Let's talk about the student athlete. One of the things that you talked about was that Rutgers has been consistently ranked #1 as academic achievement, both on the field, on the playing field, as well as off the playing field in terms of academic success. What kind of things are you all doing in athletics to kind of put that together? I don't think it's something we talk about a great deal.
No, we don't. You know, and that is, having been in media, that is the media cycle. It's not, you're not going to get interest and sell newspapers and drive ratings by telling a lot of positive stories. You got to work the negative in. But the academic success here really can't be underscored, because the previous administration, and then I've carried it from there and ramped up our efforts to provide high level of academic support, an excellent environment of support in other areas, and really a top-down communication that we are going to compete in the classroom the same way we compete on the field.
Right.
And football gets the visibility just because football in this country is what it is. But our football program being ranked #1 in the country in academic progress towards graduation of any school, public or private, but all the other programs within Rutgers having perfect academic progress rate scores, high scores, having 14 teams with GPAs above a 3.0, which is above the average of all New Brunswick Piscataway students. It really starts at the top. I have made very clear to our student athletes we expect excellence in academics, and we expect it to get better every single year. And our coaches really buy into that. Day to day, they spend more time with the student athletes than I do. But having everybody in those leadership positions bought into how important that is, because this is, I have a degree from here as an undergrad and a graduate student. This is an excellent academic institution with a lot to offer. And the ability to have a scholarship to earn that education here is an opportunity, and we've tried to help our student athletes understand that at some point your athletic career will end. Maybe you play 20 years in the NFL, but even then, at some point it ends. So this piece is critical to your success in your life, no matter when your athletic career ends.
Well, what I want folks to understand is Rutgers standards for their student athletes in terms of academic are really above the NCAA kind of conversation, really above the ability to kind of the threshold for eligibility. There really is a large standard here, and we've kind of set that. You and the coaches have really set that standard for student athletes to kind of achieve, and they're more than willing to go there to do that.
Right. We insist on it because it's a very simple conversation with the student athlete. It's, if you don't do this piece the way we want it done, the athletic piece won't exist. We will take it from you.
Right.
And it's a frank conversation, and it's not in any way designed to threaten anybody. It's just designed to send a message that you're here as an amateur athlete. You're not here competing as a professional athlete.
Right.
And part of the deal is we've provided you a scholarship or the opportunity to come here and compete, is that we expect you to achieve these things in the classroom and continually raise the bar on a regular basis. If it's communicated the right way from the top down, people buy in. And our student athletes, I mean, I see them. Last year was a great example. We played in a bowl game on December 19th. Finals were still going on when we got back. We got back at midnight on the 20th, and the 21st at 6 o'clock in the morning, as I walked through the Hale Center, I saw half our football team in study hall getting ready for exams. So our student athletes really buy into the concept, and you know, right now I think that's why we're having such success. Everybody from every level is bought into the concept.
Let's go back to the business piece. There have been a lot of reports in the news for the past year about conference changes. What does the Big East bring us? What could a potential conference change bring us? There's been lots of speculation. Speculation from ESPN to radio and WABC, everything. I even think it's sidebar conversation in some offices around campus. Recently, we just found out that, you know, Big Ten not happening, but what's important for us in a conference? What do we look for from a business perspective, as well as a student-athlete perspective in some of those ways?
Well, conference expansion is one of those things that's been around for 50 years.
Right.
And it's never going to end. And even though a conference may come out and say, hey, we're done for now, or we're not going to do anything, it doesn't mean anything is not going on behind the scenes. But like you said, speculation was the best word used in the question, because that's all it is. And as I've said all along, for Rutgers, my responsibility is to make sure we always do what we can do that's best for Rutgers on the athletic side. But conference realignment is about an institutional decision. It's not just about football or basketball or athletics. It's about an institutional fit. The speculation regarding Rutgers and other conferences, I think, is easy to arrive at those conclusions, because we're a massive land-grant research institution, an AAU institution. Those parallels can be drawn very easily and very quickly. I haven't commented on any of it or speculated, because speculating on speculation just fuels a lot of things that are frankly just not true.
Right.
And my thing is, if there are other opportunities out there for Rutgers, and if they are to arise, of course we'll evaluate everything, but we're in the Big East Conference. We have taken a leadership position in conference expansion in our own league. We just added TCU,
Right.
who will come in 2 years. My television experience has put me on the head of the TV committee, so we're trying to make the Big East the best possible place. I think what you look for in a conference is you look for like-minded institutions, so you can collaborate both athletically and academically.
Right.
I think that the other conferences may be a little bit ahead of the Big East in that, but we're getting better. I think you look at geography. You want to make sure that you're not taxing your student athletes too much with travel that cuts into class time and a variety of other things. I think you look for a very high level of competition and visibility, which we've reached certain thresholds there through our TV agreements and media agreements as a league, but there's a lot of upside there which we intend to capture as we expand our own league in football and then look towards our next round of media negotiations.
Last thing, you kind of alluded to it, we talked about it, but you haven't talked about it in specific. You're an alum.
Yep.
Undergrad, grad. You're back as the director of athletics, student athlete here. What does it mean for you to return from a place that you loved to all of a sudden take a leadership and kind of lead a state and lead an institution through a whole different phase of kind of their own growth experience?
It's about as cool as it gets. You know, I mean, cool is the word I've used over and over again, and while it may sound like that should be a word a 16-year-old should use, it's the day I came back and interviewed, it was sort of one feeling. Then I got the job, and then I spent a month transitioning from TV into this job. And on April 1st, when I walked into the back of the rack to head up to my office, one of the cooler feelings I've ever had, you know, sort of the chills of being back at Rutgers and being in a role to positively affect young people. When I was a student athlete here, I had a great experience, you know, 2 degrees, I had a great experience playing college football, made a lot of great friends, succeeded academically at a high level, met my wife who played on the lacrosse team. Like, I got more out of the experience I think anybody could get. But there were things about the experience I would have liked to be better as a student athlete. And as I came into the role and finally settled in, I realized I was in position now to change all those things to affect student athletes positively going forward. They give so much. Like, I got a lot out of Rutgers. I gave a lot in. But if you give a lot in and you're smart enough, you could take a lot out of it. And all the things I took out, I feel like I'm in a position now where I can give a lot of things back to the university that I was able to take from it and succeed in the earlier part of my career. But it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my career, this job, because you get pulled in a lot of different directions. There are a lot of pressures, but I love Rutgers, and I'm never going to do anything to embarrass the school. I'm always going to put us in the best position to succeed, and I'm not sure I could stomach a job like this if it wasn't at my alma mater.
I appreciate that. Listen, we ran out of time, so I want to thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Bill Leopold, and welcome to this edition of Breakfast at the Barracks. Joining me today is Dr. Roberta Y. Shore, Associate Professor for the Department of Urban Education at Rutgers Newark. Roberta, thanks and welcome to the show.
My pleasure, thank you.
I'm really excited to have you because you're really well known for helping to improve the achievements with students in math, specifically in urban education. So can you talk a little bit about your research and kind of what you do?
Yes, since coming to Rutgers in Newark, the mission of our Chancellor, Steve Diner, has always been outreach to the city. And so I started working in the schools in Newark a while back. I've been here a while, and a lot of kids could do a whole lot better than they were showing on standardized test scores and other measures of achievement. A lot of children who had talents and abilities that were going unnoticed we needed to do something that could energize the school system, energize teachers, energize the kids. And so I started working with a small group of kids from Sussex Middle School and Central High School, 2 of the schools that had at the time been amongst the lowest performing in the state. And I kept working with kids, and I never really checked to see what their standardized scores were. But repeatedly, the principals would come back to me about, several months later and say, the kids you worked with, they ended up doing really well on all of the tests. Now, the amount of math that I had taught them wasn't sufficient for them to have done as well as they did on these tests. And so I said, something else is happening here. We know that something is going on that really goes beyond strictly the content that we're doing. Well, that's important. And what I found was that the students, and this is my main focus in research, the students had learned to really work hard on problems that otherwise they would have gotten frustrated with and abandoned. So what happened was they learned how to deal with frustration. They learned how to view frustration as an opportunity for success as opposed to an indication of failure. And that goes a long way. We see it in ourselves. The problems that we feel best about solving are the ones we've had to struggle to solve.
Right.
And there's a lot of integrity in the work that we do when we've had to really work hard to get there. And so my goal became, how do we help teachers to really build classroom environments where students can struggle with conceptually difficult mathematical problems, and help kids to see mathematics as eminently doable, that they can succeed in this, and that they will succeed in this.
Let's go back, because one of the things you talked about was us learning to deal with frustration. How do you teach K through 8th graders to deal with frustration? What is part of that, especially around, you know, just some of the complications around algebra and that kind of, you can see it kind of manifest itself. So how do you kind of deal with that intervention, so to speak?
So the first thing that we really, my research team and I really thought about was, how do we create an emotionally safe learning environment, and an environment where we're free to explore mathematical ideas, share ideas, whether they're right or wrong, without fear of being humiliated or put down in some way by either the teacher or your fellow students. And so we gave students problems to solve, and the teachers the same problems to solve that really had multiple points of entry. Problems that were conceptually difficult. These weren't easy mathematical tasks. They were difficult tasks, but you could begin to solve them in many ways. And once you solved them, the students were pushed to justify their solutions in ways that went beyond simply, well, I just did this, or I just did that, so that their justifications became complex. And the more complexity that they had to share, the greater they got, the greater the benefit they got in doing it, and the more they realized that they were good at this. And the more the teachers realized that their own students could be good at it. Because it's one thing to look at other people's students, even if they're students in Newark, and say, well, those kids can solve it, but my students, I don't think so. So we built a project, and we were funded by the National Science Foundation in collaboration with Newark Public Schools to really help teachers build these environments throughout the K-8 system.
So in terms of collaborating and partnering with Newark Public Schools, so did you wind up doing training and kind of education with the teachers so they understood a different approach and kind of did expected outcomes, or how did you kind of approach that?
Yes, so we partnered with the school district, and the math director in the school district was absolutely wonderful. You know, people told me that when you're going to work with Newark, it's going to be difficult, difficult to get things to happen. We never had that. We ran professional development workshops for teachers, and we were actually oversubscribed.
Oh, wow.
Yes, which is unusual in large urban districts. And the teachers who came through our program really appreciated what had happened, and really, I have to say that I have worked in Newark with some of the best teachers. These were really dedicated people who wanted their children to do well and said, you know what I'm doing now may not be working so well. So they were open to new ideas, and we focused on building their mathematical content. You can't teach what you don't know. So we really had very high expectations for the teachers in terms of the level of their mathematics. Then we focused on how is it that students learn this. So we looked at really their pedagogical content knowledge. How is it that I teach this content in sophisticated ways, ways that really preserve the integrity of the mathematics? And we also focused on understanding student understanding. That you can't really teach something unless you listen closely to what children think and how they know it.
one of the things that you talked a little bit about, and one of the things I kind of want to go back is that this is an urban area. And I'm a little taken back by what's the difference between teaching in an urban area and teaching in a suburban area? I think there are lots of myths out there and lots of bad stories that don't always seem to make sense. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Having taught in both kinds of areas and having worked with teachers that really teach in rural, suburban, and urban school districts, urban students, when we speak about urban has a very, it's a euphemism for children of poverty, you know, high density, high population density. We often refer to those, we often mean those kinds of things. A lot of the children with whom we work come from backgrounds of very high poverty.
Right.
And they don't have the benefits that privilege brings. Very often, they don't have households with extensive libraries, for example. And we know that having some of these benefits really contributes to student success.
Right.
But the thing that I refuse to do is view students from a deficit perspective. Children are children. And the children in Newark that I've had the privilege of working with have great potential. And it's just a question of exposing them to the kinds of things that we often take for granted in other schools, and recognizing that the urban community offers so much, and looking at it from a very positive perspective is very helpful in terms of teacher education. We don't walk in and say, you know, the kids in this classroom don't have this and don't have that. We look at it and say, what are the affordances that the kids bring to the table, and how do we capitalize upon them?
Well, one of the things you also talk about is this your team. So can you talk to me a little bit about who makes up your team and kind of what that makeup is and kind of how you work with the populations?
First of all, we work with undergraduate and graduate students. My graduate students are a critical piece of the team. The graduate students, many of whom do doctoral dissertations on the work that we do involving student understanding and conceptual, you know, how is it that cognition is tied to the affect that I was talking about before. We have undergraduate students who I teach in my methods courses, who we send out into the schools. As part of the grant work we do, we're able to pay them to go in so that they get firsthand experiences in the Newark schools. And then we have researchers who work with me, people we can pay from the grants. And then I have my colleagues, Jakob Epstein, Jerry Golden, Lisa Warner, different colleagues who I work with throughout the Rutgers community. So it's not simply that we're in Rutgers and Newark and we work in isolation. Jaak is the director of the Center for Math, Science, and Computer Education. Jerry is a professor of mathematics and physics and education here in Rutgers, New Brunswick. And so these are all critical people on the research team. And we work with colleagues across the country at other universities who lend expertise to the scientific endeavor that we engage in.
So it's really just kind of an interdisciplinary kind of approach, and really incorporating not just traditional academic folk, so to speak, but also emerging academic folk from graduate students and undergraduate students.
And I should also mention that the Newark teachers are critical components of our research team, and the Newark administration. They absolutely are co-investigators with everything that we do, because we believe that in order for our work to be successful, it has to be academically rigorous, but it also has to have the rigor that practitioners bring. And so that's a critical component.
So we've talked about everything, but we haven't talked about your interest. I've heard that you've taught based upon kind of what you've talked about. So kind of what got you interested in really tackling this subject and really tackling kind of the achievement gap with regards to math?
I grew up in the projects in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And so what I knew was that education was the way out. And when I first started working in Newark Public Schools, when actually some people in the Title I office in Newark Schools called me in and said, you know, we really had heard about some of the work you do. Would you be interested in doing some work for us? And the woman that I spoke with said, you know, we can send you to, and she named some of the magnet schools, the schools that really glean the top achievers in Newark. And I said, tell me the schools you don't think I'd want to work in. And she mentioned those schools, and I said, that's where I'm going. And my feeling was that a lot of attention had been paid to the schools that were already doing well. And my feeling was, you know, I really want to work with kids who might not have been given the opportunity to display their talents and abilities.
Right.
And those were the kids that I mentioned to you before. They started to do really well, and their teachers were so enthusiastic. And so it was a real gift for me, and that's how I got started. And then after that, I got a grant from the Lucent Foundation to continue this research, and then I work with, then I got grants from the National Science Foundation.
There are lots of viewers who may be interested in kind of what you do, finding further information about you. How can they do that?
Well, they can go to the website at the Department of Urban Education and click on the link for me. And certainly they can email me. Very easy to contact me through email, and I'm happy to answer any questions that they may have or meet with them. And
in our final seconds here, any new projects you're working on, any new stuff you're doing?
yes, just got a grant, just brand new, $1.4 million from the National Science Foundation again to investigate the critical aspect of what constitutes mathematical engagement and motivation, because we find at the middle grades level, because we find that that's where we're losing a lot of kids, not just in Newark, but nationally, in fact, internationally. And what we want to see is how does engagement impact mathematical achievement in middle school students, and we're situating our work in Newark.
Wow. Well, I'm here for my producer. Time is up, so I want to thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. That's all the time we have for this edition of Breakfast at the Barracks. For more information about any of the subjects we've discussed here today, please visit our website at rutgers.tv. For all of us at the Rutgers Division of Continuing Studies, I'm Bill Leipold, and thank you for watching.